My experience, I noticed like one thing that's been working in Africa with business owners, just from a mining perspective, is mining is legal. Just explore how much electricity do they have, how much electricity do they consume, the cost of the electricity, convince them to put a miner to transform a cost center into a profit center in their business. The adoption is accelerating from my view for the small to medium business owners in Africa and the Middle East. No one heard of ordinals in Africa, but the impact of the ordinals and the transaction fees, they know of that. They don't want to dive into the intricacies of Lightning, opening channels, etc. No, they heard that Bitcoin has they can transfer money for cheap. They can wait 10 minutes or like 15 minutes or whatever to get their $1,000 or 10K or 20K. They want that. They hear it's been the most secure network to transact on. For them, they don't care about the speed as long as it's cheap and secure. But with ordinals, it only made that more difficult.
This is the Freedom Footprint Show, a Bitcoin philosophy show with Knut Svanholm and me, Luke DeWolf.
And we love to expand our freedom footprint. We hope you do too. The best way to do that is, of course, to emit as much freedom dioxide as possible. The best tool we have for doing that is, of course, Bitcoin.
Before we dive into today's show, we'd just like to tell you a little bit about how you can support us. First, to support us directly with Bitcoin, visit our Geyser page at geyser.fund/project/freedom. Or you can send us sats directly to freedom@geyser.fund. You can also support us as you listen by listening to the podcast on Fountain. The app is available on Apple and Android, and you can stream sats or send a boost. It's the easiest way to support the show just by listening normally.
And if you don't care too much about Luke, you can always visit knutsvanholm.com, where you can buy my fabulous wine, my books, and a t-shirt or two. And if you don't feel like supporting your fellow Bitcoiners at all, at least like, subscribe, and brush your teeth.
But seriously, that stuff actually helps. It would be great if you could subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the videos, send us a comment or leave us a review. All this stuff really helps the show. Seriously.
Click the damn bell. So thanks for tuning into the show, and we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Here's an idea for you. Come and see me and Luke in Prague, my favorite European city.
With over 100 world-class speakers and the chance to meet more than 100 leading Bitcoin companies, this is where ideas flourish, connections are made, and Bitcoin's path forward is forged together with 10,000 enthusiasts and professionals.
In Prague, people have been fighting for freedom since forever. So it's only natural that Prague is the Bitcoin capital of Europe. You should be there.
With 3 days of keynotes, panels, and side events, BTC Prague is the place to be for pure Bitcoin-only signal.
And the beer is just fantastic.
Use discount code FREEDOM for 10% off your ticket and another 5% discount if you pay with Bitcoin.
So remember, use code FREEDOM and see you in Prague.
Sooly Kobayashi, welcome to the Freedom Footprint Show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Luke.
Yeah, nice to see you, Sooly. Could you start by giving our listeners a little introduction to yourself? Give us the TLDR on Sooly Kobayashi, please.
Sure. Sooly, Lebanese born and raised. Lived through the Lebanese public corruption before all the inflation on Lebanon getting into the mainstream media. Worked into international NGOs, United Nations humanitarian development programs in Lebanon, working with ministries, working with cash programs, etc. I've always been an IT geek since 7 when I disassembled the first PC. And then, 2014, I moved to Europe, to the corporate world, where it happens just moving. I hear about something called Bitcoin. Didn't really look into it. That's my 10-year anniversary memorial since 2014. And then, I started traveling to Africa, Southwest Africa and the Middle East for the last decades, every 6 weeks for 3 weeks. And just before the inflation that hit Angola in 2016, I had started to dabble into the TradFi kind of trading, traditional finance, just as a hobby. 2016, I am in Angola. There's all this inflationary syndrome that the country is going through, from capital controls to prices to price controls to the banks not transferring money outside the country, etc. And then, that's just wanted to share that, because for me as a Lebanese, I saw that in 2016, and as soon as it started 2019 in Lebanon, I saw a lot of similarities. Now, through my Bitcoin story, just 2017, I told you of 2016, I started like TradFi shitcoinery. And it happened that I picked up Bitcoin on my investing, trading radar, just like any other asset. I didn't know what it was, just traded it just like other funds and oil and metals, etc. Had no clue about custody. And back then I was proud that, I owned some Bitcoin on a trading app. I thought it was like mine anyway in the first place. And then 2019 is where I really started to realize that this is very time consuming. I was lucky that unfortunately, the only thing I lost was time and time preference. And I only realized the importance of time preference in 2019, where it was affecting really my life, family, friends, work, because I was doing this on the side. And you have to follow the news. Asia, Europe, the States, having 2-3 screens on and like trying to understand graphs and astronomy. So it was quite a thing. And then I noticed that everything followed Bitcoin for a reason or another. So that triggered my curiosity. And frankly, I go through these annual self-reflections where I had to change something in my life. Everything was okay except sleep and like quality relationships. I was like, you know what? I'm going to convert all these top 30, 40 crypto to Bitcoin. I did that 2019, just at the beginning. Even though I started dabbling, because like I always followed Buffett's advice on like always buy when there's blood on the street. I understood back then that Bitcoin was an asset that had some legitimacy even back then. And then converted to Bitcoin 2019, and I started entering the rabbit hole. 2019, I meet a great guy, Bitcoiner and a friend, Marco from Lebanon, who's the founder of the biggest Bitcoin community in Lebanon, education community. And we started, I remember, like for weeks debating about like, you know, he's a maxi, he was a maxi, I wasn't one then. A money maximalist, let's sound money maximalist, let's keep it, let's clarify it now. This 2024, we need to clarify, I guess. And then I realized like, wow, this is really something. And I started converting all my other TradFi holdings to Bitcoin. 2020, unfortunately, it was unfortunate for the COVID syndrome and impact on the world, but being home without traveling made me discover that there was something called Clubhouse, which was like the early generation of Twitter Spaces. I got educated by Maxis in a toxic way that I really loved it, man. I loved it. I loved every single hour. Like it was like I was so thirsty for learning. And started organizing sessions on Clubhouse to educate Bitcoin in Arabic 2020 weekly with Marco. That took off. And then back then I didn't know that Swan was on one of the clubs, and they saw that I was organizing these sessions in Arabic every week, and they reached out and asked me how it's going and like if I'm interested in like to do something further. And back then, really, like even now, I work in a family business, and I don't have time to do any really operational work. But I was so frustrated back then, you know, like you just like swallow the toxic orange pill where you see I think the toxicity levels decreases over time, and you keep, at least for me, a switch where you can switch it on. This is how I do it. I think like you can be a maxi gentleman without using the toxicity left, right, and center. And then I was like, what are you doing in the Middle East and Africa, since you're asking? Because like I know the market quite well. I know who are the players, the exchanges, the applications, and I know what's happening. And I was like, I ranted and vented and vomited it all on a call. And the guy was like, maybe I think you should talk to Corey. I was like, okay. And that taught me that you create your own reality, in the sense where that's years ago. Fast forward today, I do Bitcoin consulting, business consulting, for Bitcoin companies wanting to work in the Middle East and Africa. But most of my work is to onboard non-Bitcoin companies onto Bitcoin through acquiring Bitcoin, custodying Bitcoin, mining, point of sale, a la carte menu, kind of, if someone needs it. Just because, like, through my work, which is a fiat job, now we're diversifying into a Bitcoin business unit as well that I'm handling. But it exposes me to a lot of manufacturers, supply chain distributions, business owners. And yeah, it's been really mind-blowing how you tell me, like, what's the TLDR? It's just like how it all started. And Bitcoin just gives you, first off, you just want to do something on Bitcoin. And by the way, I did give a talk on one of the European meetups, the Antwerp, Belgium meetups, about how to find a job and to create your opportunities in Bitcoin. Like, everyone wants to work on Bitcoin. Everyone wants to go on the website to look for jobs in Bitcoin companies. The best way, frankly, is to create your own, because we're not too many, and we need each other. And one thing that the TLDR of this thing is that basically every company would need someone who believes in a goal and an area. If you have an area of specialty of expertise, really just go do your homework and not start knocking on doors. If one doesn't work, the other will. That's it. Sorry for the long TLDR.
No. This is very interesting. There's a lot to unpack there. First of all, I'm curious what brought you to Angola in the first place. It's not a country that you just happen to end up in, I guess. Like, what brought you there?
My fiat job is, I'm going to try not to talk myself too much about this topic. It's just like Angola and the surrounding countries, Sub-Saharan Africa is one of the operations we have in my fiat job. And it's all supply chain based. So yeah, this is why like I'm based in Europe, where the head offices are in Europe, but the arms of the business are in Africa and the Middle East.
Okay, we won't dox you any further. I mean, that could mean literally anything from oil of Ulay to Barbie dolls to whatever. I don't know. So let's not go there. Another thing that interests me, like the little I know about Islamic banking or like Arab banking, is that I think it's taking interest. Interest is sort of a sin in Islam, isn't that the case? And it's forbidden to give out loans and require interest payments. How does that work?
So it's 3 parts, or like, let's say 4 parts. First, halal money in Islam is like avoiding riba or interest, like you mentioned. Second is this money to have an ethical business practice. Third is transparency and fairness. Transparency fourth and fairness. Transparency third and fairness fourth. So if you notice, like if you draw similarities with Bitcoin, if like from the creation of Bitcoin, from the code is written in a fair way. The proof of work mining is done in a democratic, fair way, especially with the difficulty adjustment. And the ethical business practices today, we know the illicit practices on fiat compared to Bitcoin, how it is, and why Bitcoin prevent those illicit practices from happening.
So would you say Bitcoin is halal money?
Yes, I say this, even though, disclaimer, I'm not a sheikh, even though we have a sheikh in the space called Muawiyah Tucker. You need to definitely, I don't know if you spoke with him. He's an official sheikh, teaching Sharia, etc. That's something else. Yeah, there are a couple. There's also another Bitcoiner in this place called Muslim Bitcoiner, who's also advocating a lot, and they both been writing papers, vlogging about this. And there are even like I did some just by diving into the rabbit hole, because when you just discover Bitcoin, you start asking questions, obvious questions, at least for me, like why is the logo orange? Is it halal? Is anyone like has any sheikh or like any priest or any rabbi spoke about Bitcoin before? What did they do, etc. And there are a couple of let's say a couple of sheikhs in Islam, I think in Saudi Arabia and in Bahrain, who have done lectures on YouTube about Bitcoin being halal in Arabic. And one of them has written a paper that I can share with you after the pod. It's quite interesting. I think today there's a lot happening when it comes to, I mean, if you go to Dubai, you can see like from the airport, you see the crypto shitcoinery ads welcoming you at the airport, the highways. If you go on Twitter Spaces, you see how Saudi Arabia, despite the non-legislation, is like booming when it comes to trading, etc. Just because today they're using it as a property, not as. So today it's kind of unspoken halal property that everyone is using to trade, regardless to hodl or to trade, like really short term. But you don't find anyone talking about money. And I know for a fact that I don't want to mention someone if they don't want to be mentioned, but I know for a fact that the mainstream media in the Arab world is refusing to talk about Bitcoin, comparing it to like talking about sound money on mainstream media. They are ready to speak about Bitcoin, the tech property, but don't bring up the sound money. Yeah, there's proven incidents or events where people who went on TV shows who were able and more than capable to talk about the subject, they were requested not to speak about the sound money aspect of it.
Yeah, I think that problem is sort of everywhere. I know there, for like this week when we reached a new all-time high and stuff, the Bitcoin was mentioned in Sweden as well on public service media. And of course, they never talk about the sound money aspect. That's just, it's mentioned like Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, like implying that there are more. And this is purely speculative is something they say over and over again, never realizing that everything is purely speculative, since value is subjective, right? So you never hear these other takes. You only hear it from the perspective of a statist Keynesian mindset, I guess.
100%.
We're thrilled to introduce our new sponsor, the BitBox 02 Bitcoin Only Edition. BitBox. It's fully open source, Swiss engineered, and Bitcoin only, forever. The device only supports Bitcoin, which means less code, less attack surface, and improved security for your Bitcoin. Check out the BitBox 02 Bitcoin Only Edition at bitbox.swiss/freedom.
And use code freedom for 5% off.
Next up, Wasabi Wallet, the desktop wallet with CoinJoin built in so you can preserve your privacy. Ooh! It's easy to use and open source, and their recent Juggernaut update included loads of upgrades and new features. Oh! They even added support for Bitbox. Go to wasabiwallet.io and download Wasabi today. Hey, so maybe you can take us through a little bit about your experience with the general MEA, Middle East Africa, kind of adoption there, because I know that that's one thing that you're heavily involved in here. Maybe a sort of a combination for some background. Like what's been your experience with Bitcoin in these regions that you're working with?
From a grassroots project, there's a lot happening. And there are evolution and challenges at the grassroots level. We can dive into that. From an institutional level, there's a lot of evolution. And from a regulatory point of view, there is unfortunately not much evolution except in some of the like Dubai-like cities. We're talking about Bahrain, we're talking about Dubai, in particular Abu Dhabi and the UAE. And you have the religious perspective as well. Now, it depends if you're talking about the Middle East or Africa. That's about from the religious perspectives, mainly the Middle East. But for Africa in particular, man, the evolution happening there and the progress is mind-blowing. I mean, we met in Lugano, and compared to the African conferences, the conference I attended in September was in Ghana. The amount of energy people want to work on Bitcoin, the amount of developers working on Bitcoin, the initiatives of like coding and like incentivizing people to code on Bitcoin and to create like on-ramps, off-ramps is mind-blowing. So I would start with Africa. Africa is, I think, the leading continent in adoption, but also development. And this comes from a simple idea, is that if Bitcoin is stopped for any reason in Europe, from a legislation point of view, I'm talking, because it cannot be stopped. We all know that. Or in the West, nothing will change for the Westerners. But if Bitcoin is like from a legislation point of view, try to be stopped in Africa, the Africans won't allow it to stop. Today, they need Bitcoin more than anything else. There's today also the split between some who are like complete hodling and some are like with the medium of exchange. And Africa needs Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, more than a store of value. Of course, store of value helps you in a highly inflationary environment. But if, for example, like Angola or Sierra Leone or South Africa, 70% of the market is informal markets, which means you have most of the trade, commercial trade, the food and non-food is happening on the streets, on tables, on the ground. Like the mamas and papas are just like putting their shampoos next to their oils and cereals, etc., and you go buy from there. This is what 70% of the population does. And you have public markets everywhere. Now, the governments want these traders or these ladies to register their VAT or their tax registration. And they want them to start invoicing customers. Some have, believe it or not, those ladies that might be selling something on a table might own multiple shops in the back, and they have a lot of money and they can afford going through the registration process. But this is the minority of those traders on the streets. What I'm trying to say here is, like, as a medium of exchange, these traders, these commercial businesswomen and mainly ladies in Africa, they cannot register for taxes just because they live in the slums, and every time there is rain, they will be changing their house every season. This is how informal the African continent still is, even though you go as a tourist and you see the nice places, etc. But Africa has so much potential and they need Bitcoin. And this is why M-Pesa exponentially grew there. This is why you see all these innovations on Bitcoin using mobile phones in Africa, because this is really the core need for Africa today. So from an adoption today, it's very young. I wouldn't say premature to try anything at this stage. I think there's a lot of innovation and development happening. Like if you see Ekasi in South Africa, or if you see Bitcoin Dua in Ghana or Bitcoin Dada in Kenya, they're doing great work. Each of them is trying to educate and trying to work around, like, to create a circular economy where they're working, and they are progressing. But without the support of the rest of the Bitcoiners around the world, this is not really gonna take off, I think. And this is another story. But yeah, this is for Africa from an adoption point of view. Yeah, I don't know if you want to learn more about the Middle East, we can, but I think Africa is the most interesting developing location for Bitcoin adoption nowadays.
Yeah, and the Africans really have the chance to leapfrog everyone else here by being faster on the ball. It's beautiful because it's well, for lack of a better word, revenge for 50 years of failed politics trying to solve their problems. Yeah, a lot of exciting stuff happening there, and these miners providing electricity to places that otherwise wouldn't have any chance of getting on any type of grid. I find that extremely fascinating too. And as you say, it's going fast, and I think we've just seen like this snowball start to roll down the hill, and it's only going to get bigger, and it's going to get bigger faster.
Absolutely. Talking about miners, when you see what Gridlift is doing in Kenya and Africa is amazing. But it's unfortunate there is a divide between West Africa and East Africa from a regulatory maturity, in my opinion, or wisdom. For example, Angola, who has 97% of Angolan energy is hydro. More than 65% of the Angolan energy produced from hydro is in excess abundance, so no one is absorbing it. And they banned proof of work in December 2023. So this is just an example of a country that had one of the cheapest electricity on the globe in abundance, where it can serve the rural and the urban areas, because in Africa, even the urban areas need some development, etc. What you're saying is indeed fascinating for the governments who really understood the benefits from it. But some other countries with greater unique value proposition or advantage to start mining are just like shooting themselves in the foot, unfortunately.
Malawi, same latitude as Angola. There's a facility there, I know. A couple of our friends were there visiting, and they started up something. So things are happening all over the place, it seems.
Yes, Bhutan is growing big time as well. Like Ethiopia is also, I mean, Hashlabs, the guys are doing great work, and Ethiopia as well. I mean, everyone is scouting, right? Everyone is scouting for countries with cheap electricity, but many are scouting for cheap electricity, and few are scouting for cheap properties, real estates with really waterfall or some green energy kind of innovation they can build on to mine and really develop the area where they will be based.
Yeah, fascinating continent. It's a land of opportunity. Always has been in a way, but especially like in times like these when there's a whole new industry to be explored here.
Yeah,
fascinating.
100%. Like for me, my experience, like when I started like orange pilling talking about Bitcoin left, right, and center, like all of us. And then I noticed like one thing that's been working in Africa with manufacturers, for business owners, just from a mining perspective, is mining is legal. Just explore the homework of like to know how much electricity do they have, how much electricity do they consume, how much is the cost of the electricity, and just convince them to put a miner to transform a cost center into a profit center in their business. One miner becomes 2, and 2 becomes 5, and 5 becomes 10. And then I was like, oh, I need to buy more Bitcoin because I don't have space for miners in my business. Yeah, I think it's unfortunate, like the adoption is accelerating from my view for the small to medium business owners in Africa and the Middle East, but not for the individual. I'm talking from a mining perspective.
Fascinating. You should mention Bahrain there before. I spent some time there, but my family used to live there, and I used to semi-live there, or I was on and off. I was working on boats at the time, and so I was like out for 6 weeks, and then I spent like 4 weeks in Bahrain maybe, and then 2 weeks in Sweden or something. So and it's a fascinating place. From what I know, they recently converted from an emirate to a kingdom, I think. So what do you know about the regulations and stuff there? It's a bit more liberal than Saudi Arabia. I know that much. Maybe not as liberal as Dubai, but somewhere in between. What's going on?
From a liberal point of view, or liberalism is something,
or liberty point of view.
Listen, I once heard one saying, like, if you don't have a gay parade on the street of a country, that means you don't have liberty. And at the same time, liberty is freedom of speech, etc. Now, we're going to talk about what's happening in the region. Today, there is a competition between Dubai, or the UAE, and the United Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Okay. So Kingdom Saudi Arabia decided last year they have this vision that they want to be the leading city in the Middle East. Like one of their regions, one of their areas in Saudi, they want to convert it into really like a mind-blowing, futuristic kind of city. And of course, before that vision, you had Dubai in the Middle East that had a similar kind of view. And today you have a competition between both.
That's Neom, right?
Yes, correct. Neon is one of the is the city that got the marketing and the spotlights about how things are expected to be, etc. Like you have flying cars and like schools and hospitals like above each other on a horizontal line in the desert, like really mind blowing from an architecture point of view. But let's see about that with like a lot, like the budget was about like $60 billion or something ridiculous.
It's a very Fiat-y project though. It's like central planning all over the place, right?
100%. Like, okay, so I don't think the Middle East or Africa is getting away from central planning anytime soon. Okay, unfortunately. From a freedom footprint point of view, I think things are getting better in some areas that have witnessed already some oppression over the years. However, there are other areas like Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, Egypt, with Sudan, things are getting worse and worse. And you have the oil-rich countries like Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UAE that are really working on the regulatory point of view that to accelerate and open to absorb basically the international investment when it comes to Bitcoin. Bahrain is one of the leading ones, I think, after the UAE. So you have Dubai first, Abu Dhabi second, Bahrain maybe third. But despite all what you read on the media, that even Dubai, let's talk only about Dubai just because for you to understand what I'm talking about. Today, you have Bitcoin companies who went and opened offices in Dubai a year ago, recruited, opened bank accounts with a lot of headache doing it, and they still didn't get their license. And it's been like 360 days since they applied. Now today in Dubai, and we're talking about the most open city / country in the world that should be really be open-minded about Bitcoin and absorbing the businesses and individuals. Today, if you are a business, and I spoke with compliance departments in banks trying to convince them about like Bitcoin, etc., you might read that the bank is really Bitcoin friendly. You go, they tell you, yes, it's crypto friendly or Bitcoin friendly. You open a bank account as a business, I'm talking. And the moment you're going to receive a transaction from a buying or selling Bitcoin, let's say you have sister companies in Africa and you want to just transfer because like doing your own treasury management, you go through a very long, difficult process. Now, apparently there are some new banks that are trying to make it easier for you from a banking perspective. From a licensing perspective, today depends what you want to do. And it applies also the same in Bahrain. Today you have, and you can notice from the couple of exchanges in the region, you have a couple of exchanges that you don't have Bitcoin only exchanges for a fact, unfortunately, not yet. But the exchanges you have only like couple of crypto and only Bitcoin. If you want to open a business today in the Middle East, you need to really find, because you have, it depends on your business model that you have different licenses. And if you read just the law, it's really crazy how they're trying to regulate everything from wallets to exchanges to if you're minting or not, if you're holding custody or not, if you are just a normal startup, you're not holding custody. Let's say you're creating a Bitcoin app, right? Where you can integrate with other applications. You can't open a normal bank account. You need to go through a specific regulatory process. So it's still good, better than other areas where they really don't allow you to do anything, to be fair. We're still early because when you talk to banks, they don't have a clue still about what we're talking about. But yeah, I had the same conversation with Portuguese banks of companies operating in Angola, trying to move their liquidity through Bitcoin with a Portuguese bank that they have in Angola and Portugal. And the Portuguese bank didn't knew, or at least they didn't tell me, that they acted really idiots, not understanding what's the Portuguese crypto legislation. So I went online on ChatGPT for 3 hours meeting with the CFO of a company and the compliance department in Lisbon, Portugal, copy pasting their own legislation, telling them, listen, guys, your country has some legislation about cryptocurrency, and you can apply that. And they started asking about how can you trace Bitcoin transaction? It's things are, and I was even having a conversation with your friend Jeff Booth, Knut, asking him are they stupid or are they playing dumb? And he was I think they're playing dumb, just because
it's a bit of both, I think.
Yeah, but when you're talking about with people that are not boomers, who've been in the space and who have read few things, you imagine there's a minimum. I think today the world as much as they have the ETF and they're happy with the ETF and the banks are marketing Bitcoin as a good thing, I'm more on the conservative, pessimistic side from a legislation point of view. I'm over time, long term, as much as I'm hugely bullish on Bitcoin, I'm a sell money maximalist, but I'm very pessimistic about the future, unfortunately, when it comes to real legislations, etc., and seeing the CBDCs happening. Abu Dhabi, for example, is working on a CBDC to go hand in hand with the Chinese CBDC in specific, for example. And Abu Dhabi has the central bank of the UAE. I'm thinking about all these things, okay, we're happy with the price going up, great. But
there is another perspective though, and that is that these regulations are forcing people to actually adopt a Bitcoin standard and do business on Bitcoin without involving banks or governments or anything like that, because a business on a Bitcoin standard doesn't have to be anything. You don't have to do any paperwork. It can be a Telegram group or a Nostr chat, So, so it is unstoppable in that sense. If you really use it the way you can, and there are tools like Wasabi, for instance, the coin joins and stuff. You can be completely private and you can be completely independent, and that at the end of the day, that's the point of the whole thing. Because it can't be permissionless if it needs permission from people. Either it is permissionless or not. And it can't really compete with any other currency or asset if it isn't. It needs to be outside of the law. It needs to be independent from what any human being, regardless if it's an emir, a king, or a president, or a prime minister. Bitcoin needs to not give a fuck about that, and that's a feature, not a bug. So I think what they're really achieving with all of this, especially when they're threatening with CBDCs and stuff, is that they're pushing everyone with a brain out away from the legacy systems and onto this new standard. And I take the more optimistic view. We have these Riverside here, or Zoom calls or video conferencing. We have social media, including Nostr, which is sort of unstoppable. And we have Bitcoin, which is very much unstoppable. So we're unstoppable. They can't stop this from happening. And sure, they can make martyrs out of this or that Bitcoiner. They can imprison this or that guy. But on the whole, there will be a segment of the world population that just don't have to care about laws and regulations. Just as I guess the central bankers and quote unquote diplomats of the world don't have to care about laws and regulations right now, like the so-called elites, which is just basically the most successful thieves. But we're creating a new global class of citizenry here that doesn't have to care about laws the way legacy people do.
100%. But I think my frustration stems from the lack of the effort. I mean, there are a lot of efforts, don't get me wrong. Just like there's a lot of development happening. We need to develop this wallet 2.0. We need to develop this solution, second, third layer, etc. It's all good for Bitcoin. But when it comes to Middle East and Africa. When I talk about Middle East and Africa, I'm not talking about the rich countries like Nigeria, or I'm talking about Dubai or Saudi Arabia. I'm talking about really the poor countries that really need Bitcoin as Bitcoin. Today, in order to use Bitcoin or to build resilience for the people, because we understand Bitcoin, but like it took you thousands of hours or hundreds of hours to be where you are today. But the normal business owner, convincing him today with Bitcoin, it got much more difficult with the ordinals. That's one thing. Second thing, we need to, like, in order to, like what you said about like Bitcoin doesn't care, doesn't give a fuck by design. If those individuals can't spend their Bitcoin to buy their needs, they don't really see the benefits from it other than store of value. Remittances, yes, to receive it from their diaspora, from outside their continent where they have billions, millions and billions, yes, okay. But today it's very crucial to really accelerate a circular economy for these areas. And I think there are a couple of initiatives happening around the world that would only help that. Once we have a circular economy, and I'm not talking about the on-ramps we have like Bitrefill. I'm talking about really the like normal businesses to really accept Bitcoin from anything to anything, really. That would help, and that would help feel the communities that they can adopt Bitcoin and to use it without going through the fiat on-ramp. Until we get that, we still rely, or the continent still rely, and the region still rely on the banks. Even like today, you have unbanked people in Africa, but some share M-Pesa account. Some share a SIM card today in Africa, just because they can't handle the fees, etc. So self-sovereignty, they need to feel like they can survive, they can thrive, from medical services to food to travel using Bitcoin. If they don't know about Bitrefill or any other option, that's also a problem until today.
Yeah. So that's like, we have to keep pushing the mantra: accept Bitcoin for your goods and services. That's the most crucial thing. If you do, then you help this thing happen, regardless of where you're from or where you happen to be in the world.
We're now partnered with the Bitcoin Advisor, your best choice for collaborative multi-sig custody. The Bitcoin Advisor guides you every step of the way, from taking self-custody of your Bitcoin to securing it in their multi-sig vaults. Estate planning and inheritance is built in, so your loved ones can have peace of mind.
And you know what the best part is? Me and Luke are Bitcoin advisors. So you can contact us. We can advise you about Bitcoin and Bitcoin custody, how to make custard, anything really. We're Bitcoin advisors.
So visit us at thebitcoinadvisor.com/freedom or send us a DM or email to get started.
Contact us within 2 weeks and we'll throw in a free set of steak knives. Maybe.
The show is also sponsored by Orange Pill app, the Bitcoin-only social network where you can stack friends who stack sats. Make local connections and find all the nearby meetups, see what's going on in your area, and connect with Bitcoiners around you. And now, with a brand new merchant section, it's easier than ever to find and connect with local businesses that accept Bitcoin.
The best part about Orange Pill app is that you know that it's high signal because you're paying for Orange Pill app, and so is everyone else. There are no Asian ladies asking you how your trade is going on Orange Pill app, because it's not a trading app. It's a dating app. Is it a dating app?
So download the Orange Pill app on Apple or Android, send us a DM, and start building your local network of Bitcoiners. So you mentioned that the ordinals thing being a barrier to adoption for businesses. Like they see that and it makes it more difficult. Can you explain that a little bit?
I mean, they don't, like, no one heard of ordinals in Africa. I mean, at least the people who I see and work with. But the impact of the ordinals and the transaction fees, they know of that. And of course, now that it got better than before, because like with the hype a couple of months back, it was just ridiculous. Yes, it was an opportunity to onboard them on Lightning and to explain what Lightning is, etc. But frankly speaking, when you're talking to a business owner who's like in his 40s something, his 20s something, but when you're talking for someone in his 60s, just explaining something very simple, you want to keep it simple. They don't want to dive into the intricacies of Lightning and if they need privacy for liquid or not, and there's like opening channels, etc. No, So they heard that Bitcoin has they can transfer money for cheap. They can wait 10 minutes or like 15 minutes or whatever to get their $1,000 or 10K or 20K. They want that. And they hear it's been the most secure network to transact on. For them, they don't care about the speed as long as it's cheap and secure. They don't want to trust a third party. Great. But with the ordinals, it only made that more difficult. Now, yes, maybe history and block size war taught us that it's only accelerates the development of layer 2s, layer 3s to make things better, blah, blah, blah. Yes, on all the above. But frankly speaking, on the ground, we're still not there yet.
Well, the ordinals problem seems to be solving itself now if you have a look at the mempool, because like if I switch to the data visualization here on mempool.space, like, it's not at all as bad as it was like a month ago. So they might be finally running out of money.
That's just for any given block, though. I mean, I empathize with your point here, Sooly, that like what I've seen as being the biggest problem is that it's contributed to create basically a minimum price right now. I mean, the ordinals are adding just enough demand that the mempool isn't clearing at all, like it used to, say, 6 months ago or a year ago or something like that. And there can be an argument that maybe that's a good thing, right? But the thing is, the combination of that Binance comes in and does a batch of consolidation transactions that's going to fill up 20 blocks, and then you have these spiky. It still happens that there's a big spike, and it's all from some kind of inscription mint or something like that, and so those spike for a while, and so those Binance transactions don't get dealt with. It takes longer, right? And I mean, I think the thing that I appreciate you saying is that there is an effect on the ground, right? The problem solving itself. Okay, I can kind of see that to some extent. It's certainly not as bad as it was 3 months ago, for example, but higher fees are higher fees, and it prevents users from actually transacting money, like a monetary transaction, at the fee rate that they could if. Here, I'll maybe try to be a little more succinct about this. There's no such thing as waiting for a couple of days for fees to go down anymore. It's just that fees sort of have this floor, and you put a transaction in, you have to do it above that floor, or you have no idea how long it's going to transact from. So that floor used to be 1 sat per VByte. Now it's something in the realm of 12. It was 20 a month ago or something, right? So it's just raised the floor. It's raised the ability for someone to transact, right? So yeah, what do you think about that? Is that really having an effect?
I mean, 3 months ago it was an issue, and people just like were, especially like you have a lot of crypto bros trying to enter the market, especially after the finance shake last year. There's a lot of opportunities in Africa, and they keep for me is like defending Bitcoin in a way or marketing Bitcoin over other shitcoins. I mean, of course, going through the basics. But when it comes from a transaction point of view and the fees point of view, that was an issue. Now it's no longer the issue, and education is key at the same time. The more you educate, the better. The more chance you have to educate, the more time you have to educate, depends who you're talking to. If you're talking to a family office with a board, you need to pick the youngest age group. If you're talking to a barber in Africa who's in his 60s, it's going to be just tough. You need to download, unfortunately, a Lightning wallet and transact on Wallet of Satoshi to convince them, and then orange them this way. So things change. There isn't, yes, it affected the education. Just like, when you're orange billing for a long time using the same techniques, you don't have to worry about the fees. And from a day to another, fees are up. You need to change the whole. For me, I'm a bit OCD and perfectionist in the sense where, yes, of course you can pitch for the Lightning, but Lightning has its weaknesses as well. I don't like to pitch something that I'm not 100% sure of. I'm 100% sure of Bitcoin today. Am I 100% sure of Lightning? In a controlled environment, yes, I am. Like I know people who, and I even encourage and did some implementations where they had different offices across different countries. They have different nodes and they can transact their own channels in a self-sovereign way. But this is not your typical business owner today. And if we're gonna drive adoption, I think there's a lot of, despite the development on L2s and L3s, and it's fantastic, L1 is still the way to go, in my opinion, for Africa when it comes to, I'm not talking medium of exchange, just to teach about Bitcoin.
A bit of a historical perspective here, though, from like having lived through the SegWit, the fork wars back in 2017. So there was a period like before the fork, but also after, like during 2018, where no one thought the mempool would ever clear again, but it did. Like it took months and months, but then it cleared up again. And the same thing in when was that? Like 2021. We had high fears for a while. Like I think this is the first ordinal type, if it's even that. But then it cleared again, and now we're having this spike, and it's going down again. And we can think that it's never going to clear again, but we don't really know that. We'll have to wait and see, I guess.
Bitcoin doesn't care. We don't. You don't. The funny part is, like, really, this is like the whole. We're entering the ordinal topic. Just like in Africa or the Middle East, it's a region that needs really sound money for the characteristics of sound money. And ordinals is just another fiat centralized VC way of doing things. It would be, creating hype and demand and adoption and blah, 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 getting people back, or like someone really liking, like the mind-blowing thing is just like today you have NFT artists claiming to be Bitcoin maxis because they believe in Bitcoin network to be the strongest network on earth. It's like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, we saw some real Bitcoin art at Bitcoin Atlantis, Fractal Encrypt, tons of other artists, but Fractal's piece was the centerpiece of this art gallery. Absolutely mind-blowing stuff, just mind-blowing. And that's some real art right there.
And not clogging the chain at all. It's like even that Fractal works so hard on his art, so he doesn't have time to do any on-chain transactions. So he's even offloading
I have Fractal's work at home. I love his work, man. Yeah, I wasn't able to make it for Atlantis this year, but I only saw amazing reviews, guys. Well done.
We had such a wonderful time, and yeah, we're releasing a lot of episodes from that right now. This will, of course, be released after that, so that doesn't matter to this show. Anyway, Sooly, tell us a bit about your current thing, like the consulting you do. You consult Bitcoin businesses, you said, and like individuals as well?
Yes, correct. So what I do from the Bitcoin space, I'm always on the hunt to try to do my homework to see if there's any opportunity for a Bitcoin-only company to find opportunities in the market in Africa or the Middle East. So what I do is, like, I assess the market and knock on their doors, proposing a strategy to work on. So yeah, I did that with Swan. I did that with Jam 3, even though Jam 3 and their perspectives, like, okay, but like, for example, Dubai doesn't need Jam 3. They have enough money for Jam 3. But this is exactly the point. Like the whole region needs Jam 3, and we will see more of Jam 3, I'm sure, this year in Africa. So this is what I do for the Bitcoin companies. Now, even like I expanded into, like, there's a lot of services that some of the Bitcoin companies, they don't have a presence in the Middle East. They need to run some assessments, some vetting for partners, etc. So I did that. But the core is really onboarding individuals and businesses, high net worth individuals in specific, or business owners that can be just a barber, or like really non-profit Bitcoin organizations like Bitcoin Dua and Bitcoin Dada in Kenya and Ghana, just to see how can Bitcoin help them grow. Because at the end of the day, I strongly believe that, like all of us, like helping each other, helping Bitcoin entities thrive, we will all benefit from it. So yeah, what I do is like, it all starts with I call it the Nakamoto approach, where it's like I divided just a normal thinking where it's you do the assessment, you have your white paper, and after the white paper, you do basically the first step is a discovery call, getting to know the client, etc. And then we do a preliminary deep dive of like the white paper preparation, where we go, we do a SWOT analysis of the strategy, the vision of the person, etc. And then I write like a clear proposal to serve the entity or the organization. And by the way, it varies between all sectors, agriculture, manufacturing, and services as well. You have like great business owners who've been building or using Bitcoin in different ways. And for me, Orange Drilling has been so interesting in the sense where I'm not convincing people to buy Bitcoin, just convincing people to really optimize their operations. Bitcoin brings you marketing today. Bitcoin brings you a point of sale and less accounting heads in your accounting department for less reconciliations during the day to do. There's a lot of things, and energy and mining. So frankly, Bitcoin is so easy to defend because it's so strong and amazing. So, and then there's a session called the protocol alignment, where there's a roadmap of what needs to be done milestones wise based on the business or the high net worth individuals. And then there are checkpoints in between, and then there's a block confirmation. I call it in the process. The block confirmation is like the strategy implementation, and there's a difficulty adjustment at the end where there's always a check. So there's a timeline of a roadmap of different sessions. I call it Nakamoto approach, and very transparent. This way, it made me consistent with all the clients and to make sure that everything goes well. And it's very transparent, very methodical, and it works. So yeah, this is what I do, and unfortunately, I haven't finalized the website yet because sometimes I have a too low time of a preference. My time preference is too low sometimes. But yeah, I'll be launching this website very soon. Just because I didn't need the website before, but now that with all the hype and everyone wants more Bitcoin, it makes more sense.
So where can people find you online if they can't find you on the website?
Sooly Kobayashi on Twitter, on LinkedIn. And yeah, that's me on all platforms, Sooly Kobayashi.
And if they want your services, they can shoot you a DM, I guess.
Always open. Thank you.
Sooly, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us.
Likewise. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Take care. Good luck with everything.
This has been the Freedom Footprint Show. Like, subscribe, and brush your teeth. Thanks for listening.